If you're going to drive reach trucks, you need to know the correct way. This short film is designed to give you an overview of the most important areas of reach truck operation and how to be an efficient but safe reach truck driver. There are many aspects to the safe use of reach trucks. They're powerful machines, but that can make them dangerous in careless hands, particularly as they work in confined spaces and lift very heavy loads to high storage positions. And never forget that throughout the world there are far too many accidents involving forklift trucks, often with fatal consequences. Safe use of reach trucks begins by taking care of your truck. Think about your reach truck and the trust that you'll put in it during the working day. For starters, no one should ever leave a reach truck like this. It's a real hazard, blocking an aisle. So, even if you're not actually using the truck, you can cause accidents or just plain inconvenience by not thinking. At the end of your shift, always leave your truck in the designated place, and don't forget to put the battery on charge and carefully follow all safety procedures when taking care of this important process. Remember to remove the key, or if you have PIN code activation, don't forget to switch the truck off every time you leave it. Accidents are often caused by unauthorized people jumping on a truck because it's available for them to use, when it quite simply shouldn't be. At the start of the next shift, always check the truck thoroughly. Examine the battery levels. Make sure the horn works. Check the controls, and don't forget the parking brake. Check that the forklift and reach mechanisms are all working properly prior to the commencement of your shift. This must be a daily routine because lives may depend upon it, including your own. Never forget that it's your responsibility to ensure that any identified faults are reported and correctly fixed before you take your truck out on the job. So, having thought about your truck, let's move on to driving. Reach trucks are carefully designed machines that carry the load within the wheelbase to create a low, safe center of gravity. But never forget that your reach truck is surprisingly powerful when traveling from A to B. Corners and doors always need care. Think about pedestrians and who may be on the other side. Be prepared to creep up and stop if necessary. Don't hesitate to use the horn. It's the only way other people know you're there in a busy, sometimes noisy warehouse. Think about gradients and floor conditions at all times when you're driving. Slippery floors create hazards, and gradients have to be negotiated with care. The general rule when driving an unladen truck is to keep the forks behind you. But common sense tells you there are exceptions to every rule. It makes sense downhill to change the rules so the forks are ahead of you. That way you have more stability when driving, and in particular when stopping. In the same way, if you're traveling uphill with an unladen truck, you'll have better stability with the forks behind you. And don't forget that when approaching a slope, you may have to raise the forks a little to clear the ground. This applies when you're traveling up or down. Now let's think about that clever reach mechanism on your truck. It's easy to pick up bad habits in a busy warehouse, and it may save time to drive with the reach out, but that's a shortcut to disaster. The point is, for a driver, be prepared for obstructions and keep your reach in. So, what have we seen so far? We've thought about the truck and ensuring that it's parked safely, with the keys removed or the power switched off. We've thought about the truck in terms of safety checks at the beginning of the shift to ensure that it's working properly. And we've remembered to put our truck on charge at the end of the day. Driving an unladen truck may look easy, but don't forget, keep the forks behind you unless you're going downhill or are about to pick up a load. Don't speed. Think about pedestrians, because you never know who's coming around the corner or through the doors. And always be careful on slopes. Always keep the reach in and your eyes on the lookout. Now let's move on to the next stage and think about picking up a load. Believe it or not, there is an easy way of getting into the correct position. Let's see how it works. Good modern reach trucks can actually turn on the spot. When driving a truck, we refer to the pivot point, which is the center of the front wheels. So, to line up and pick up that pallet, drive forks first so that the pivot point is in line with the center block of the pallet. Put on sufficient lock, bearing in mind how easy that can be with modern electronic steering, and turn the truck. Your forks are now on target. The general rule of thumb when using your lift and reach mechanisms is to check that the parking brake is engaged, ensuring the truck is stable and unable to move during this delicate process. Some trucks are now equipped with automatic parking brakes, which means that as you apply the foot brake, the parking brake is also applied when the truck is stationary. But check how your truck works and ensure the parking brake is always safely engaged. So, now let's lift a pallet. Uh-oh, his forks are at the wrong height. Always take care when lifting heavy loads at height. Treat them with respect. Think of the damage that can be caused. With normal racking systems and traditional reach trucks, there are some simple devices you can use to help you get it right every time. Most modern trucks have height indicators, but of course you need to know the height of each beam level in advance. If your truck doesn't have this device, then you can tape the mast to indicate each beam level. Every time the fork rises to the level, the two pieces of tape meet, and you know you're there exactly. Many trucks today have height pre-selection systems, which mean you simply have to key in the beam level you require, and the truck takes care of the thinking for you. And never forget, even with the most advanced machines that allow the best view of high-level handling, you must be accurate when it comes to fork heights. Another important factor is to consider the size and weight of pallet loads. Pallets can vary in size. Some are 800 by 1200 millimeters, others are 1000 by 1200 millimeters. Some can be used both ways, whilst some are free entry and others are fully boarded. Most of the time you may know what to expect in your working environment, but don't always assume. Think about the load you're carrying. On the ground or in racking where short pallets may be positioned close together, this can easily happen. The way round it is to look out for non-standard pallets, then mark their position on your forks so you know how far to insert them. So, short pallets need to be picked up on the end of your forks. But to be safe, you need some idea of the weight of the load. The maximum load that your truck can safely lift is based upon the 1200 millimeter long pallet. The load is centered on the halfway point, which is 600 millimeters from the heel of the forks. Lifting a short load of the same weight on the end of your forks will create an imbalance. So, the further the load is from the heel, the lighter it has to be. It's all a question of balance. To balance a longer load, the weight must be less than the maximum allowed in the normal position due to the load center shifting away from the heel. Inside your cab is a table of load weights for different load centers. Use it. Think about the load to keep your truck and your feet safely on the ground. So let's take on that load from the very beginning. The 90-degree turn, taking the pivot point to the center point of the pallet and turning the steering wheel to put on sufficient lock. Apply the parking brake. Good. Now you know the height of the beam. Be careful to check the size of the pallet and weight of the load, checking the load center as you go. Raise your forks and at eye level, check the tilt to make sure the forks are level. Continue raising them until the markers meet or the indicator point is reached. Creep the truck in, brake, and finally, carefully reach out. Raise the load a few centimeters, then tilt the forks up to stabilize the load and reach in. Then creep the truck back so that the load clears the racking. And never operate the reach or raise or lower the forks without the parking brake applied. Lower the load, and if it's a short pallet that isn't on the heel of the forks, lower it to the floor and reposition it to the heel before driving off. Driving with a load is in many ways similar to driving without. The most important thing is to maintain visibility at all times. Always drive with the load behind you, unless you're positioning the load to deposit it. Earlier, we saw the need to think about corners, doorways, and busy areas. Remember to slow down and to use the horn, as it's a vital warning to others, provided, of course, that it's used in time. But carrying a load on a slope, on a slope, adopt the opposite rule to driving unladen. Downhill, keep the forks behind, and uphill, keep them in front. The load is always above you, leaning back into the heel. Another way of thinking about slopes is unladen, forks face down. Laden, forks face up. The worst way to drive with a load is breaking the simple rules. Think about the length of your truck and always drive with the reach pulled in. And think about height. Always drive with the load as low as practicable. There is no safe way to carry a load high in the air. Even experienced drivers have to do it sometimes with wide loads, apparently to clear obstacles on the ground. But what about obstacles up above? Or on a tight bend? Maneuvering with load raised is one of the most dangerous things you can do with your reach truck. It could affect its stability. This test rig shows that if a load is heavy enough and high enough, crossing a slope or leaning out of the bend, then enough risk factors may come together to tip the balance. Remember that any damaged vehicle or load costs dearly in expensive repair downtime and in lost revenue. And there may be a personal price to pay too. Think about safety and the number of people that are killed or seriously injured by ignoring the basic rules for safe operation of forklift trucks. So, accepting these good driving techniques developed over many years of experience are worth knowing. They transfer the power of reach trucks safely into your hands, giving you the power to be efficient and safe at the same time.